Let's say you just bought a brand new laptop. Out of the box, it looks clean, feels fast, and you're excited. Then, 3 days later, Windows forces a restart in the middle of your work session. You lose an hour of progress. You didn't ask for an update. You didn't schedule it. Microsoft just decided, on your behalf, that your time didn't matter. That's Windows doing what it was designed to do, which is to prioritize Microsoft's update schedule over your life. Now, fast forward to April 2026. A version of Linux just dropped that makes that entire experience feel like something from a different century. Ubuntu 26.04 is here, and it is not the Linux you remember. It is not the Linux your IT friend spent 3 weekends configuring just to get Wi-Fi working. And by the end of this video, you're going to understand why this release changes the conversation about which operating system is built for modern human beings. But before we get to the good stuff, I need to tell you about the thing that nobody in the mainstream tech press is talking about. There's a detail buried inside this release that doesn't just compete with Windows. It exposes something about the way Microsoft has been treating its users for years. Stick with me, because that part matters. Let's go back to the beginning. Ubuntu is built and maintained by a company called Canonical. Founded in 2004 by Mark Shuttleworth, a South African entrepreneur who, and this is not a metaphor, literally bought a seat on a Russian rocket and went to the International Space Station. The guy has always been willing to do things that the establishment thought were crazy. That spirit has defined Ubuntu since day one. Ubuntu releases on a very specific rhythm. Every 2 years, Canonical drops what's called an LTS release, long-term support. These are the big ones. These are the versions that enterprises, governments, hospitals, and universities run, because Canonical commits to supporting them with security patches and updates for 5 full years on the desktop, and up to 12 years for certain server configurations. The last LTS was Ubuntu 24.04, released in April 2024. That version was already a significant improvement. Better hardware support, a cleaner GNOME desktop, faster boot times, but it still had rough edges. Canonical knew it. The community knew it. Ubuntu 26.04 is the answer to those rough edges. And the answer is aggressive. Canonical has spent 2 years watching Windows 11 alienate its own user base. Watching Microsoft shove Copilot AI into every corner of the interface whether users wanted it or not. Watching hundreds of millions of perfectly functional machines get pushed toward obsolescence on Microsoft's timeline rather than their owners. Canonical saw an opening, and they built 26.04 specifically to walk through it. Now the story gets complicated because the Linux world has a habit of shooting itself in the foot right at the moment of maximum opportunity. In the months leading up to the 26.04 release cycle, there was a significant internal tension inside the Ubuntu community around a piece of software called Snap. If you're not familiar, Snap is Canonical's proprietary packaging format for applications. The idea is elegant on paper. Bundle an app with all its dependencies so it runs the same way on every Linux system regardless of what's underneath. Clean, predictable, easy to update. The problem is that Snap packages are notoriously slower to launch than traditionally installed applications. We're talking about applications that take 2, sometimes 3 seconds longer to open than their native counterparts. On a modern machine, that delay feels like you're running software from 2009. The backlash inside the Linux community was real and loud. Reddit threads, forum posts, developers publicly forking Snap-dependent projects to remove the Snap dependency. The Pop! OS team at System 76 doubled down on their own alternative, the Cosmic Desktop, partly as a philosophical rejection of the direction Snap was taking things. Even longtime Ubuntu contributors started publicly questioning whether Canonical had lost touch with what made Linux worth using in the first place. The complaint wasn't just about speed, it was about control. Canonical had made the Snap Store a proprietary, centrally controlled repository in a world where open source and community governance are supposed to be foundational values. Conflict over Snap wasn't a technical dispute, it was an identity crisis. Ubuntu was starting to look less like a community operating system and more like a product roadmap, decided in a boardroom. And then Canonical did something surprising. They listened. Ubuntu 26.04 does not abandon Snap. Let's be clear about that. Snap is still there, it still works. Firefox still ships as a Snap by default. But Canonical made a series of meaningful concessions. First, they dramatically improved Snap startup performance. The gap that used to be 2 to 3 seconds on cold launches has been compressed significantly, and for commonly used applications, the difference is now nearly imperceptible on modern hardware. Second, and this is the more important move, they've given users genuinely easy tools to replace Snap packages with Flatpak equivalents, which is a community-governed, open alternative, without needing to touch the terminal at all. You can do it from the Software Center with a drop-down menu. That is a symbolic and practical olive branch to a community that was starting to feel ignored. But the Snap story is almost a sideshow compared to what Canonical built inside this release. Ubuntu 26.04 ships with GNOME 48 as its desktop environment. And GNOME 48 is legitimately the most polished, cohesive Linux desktop that has ever existed. The notification system has been completely rebuilt. It now groups intelligently, dismisses cleanly, and respects your focus state in a way that feels like someone at Canonical sat down with a stopwatch and measured how long it takes an average person to process an interruption. The file manager, Nautilus, got a full redesign that makes finding and managing files feel intuitive in a way that would be shocking to anyone who last tried Ubuntu 3 or 4 years ago. And the display scaling, which has historically been Linux's most embarrassing failure point on high DPI monitors, finally works. Not sort of works. Not works if you tweak 3 config files and restart the compositor. It just works, including fractional scaling at 125 and 150%, which is what most modern 1440p and 4K monitors need. The performance numbers are not marketing copy. Ubuntu 26.04 boots in under 8 seconds on mid-range hardware that would take Windows 11 20 to 30 seconds to reach a usable state. Memory usage at idle cites around 800 megabytes compared to Windows 11's baseline of around 3 to 4 gigabytes before you've opened a single application. On a machine with 8 gigabytes of RAM, that difference is not theoretical. It is the difference between a computer that feels responsive and one that feels like it's constantly apologizing to you. The download numbers from Canonical and from third-party mirror statistics suggested that 26.04 had the strongest first-month adoption of any Ubuntu LTS in the company's history. The Steam Hardware Survey, which tracks the operating systems of people who game on PC, showed Linux's share crossing 4% for the first time. A number that sounds small until you remember that represents tens of millions of machines and has been growing every single month for the past 2 years. The System 76 Cosmic Desktop team, despite their earlier friction with Canonical, publicly acknowledged the improvements were real. Several major Linux content creators who had publicly criticized Ubuntu 24.04 uploaded follow-up videos walking back their skepticism. More importantly, a growing number of enterprise IT departments began circulating internal documents evaluating 26.04 as a viable Windows replacement for general office workloads, especially in the context of the Windows 10 end-of-life deadline. When Microsoft announced that it would charge $30 per machine per year for extended Windows 10 security updates, Canonical's response was essentially a single sentence: Ubuntu 26.04 is free and supported until 2031. $30 per machine per year. Multiply that by the number of computers in an organization running Windows 10, and suddenly the conversation in the IT meeting room gets very uncomfortable for the Microsoft sales rep. That is the moment we are living in right now. This is not a hypothetical future where Linux might be ready. This is a concrete present where a very specific version of a very specific operating system is ready today, and a very specific set of external pressures. Windows 10 end of life, Windows 11 hardware requirements excluding older machines, and Microsoft's increasingly aggressive AI integration that many users find intrusive are pushing people toward the door at the moment Ubuntu 26.04 is standing on the other side of it. The question is not whether Linux can do what Windows does. The question is whether you're going to make the decision yourself or wait for Microsoft to make it for you. So here's what you can do with this information, right now, today. The first thing you should do is download the Ubuntu 26.04 ISO from ubuntu.com. and burn it to a USB drive using a free tool called Balena Etcher. Boot from that drive and run Ubuntu in live mode. Nothing gets installed, nothing on your computer changes. Spend an hour in it. Open a browser. Connect to Wi-Fi. Play a YouTube video. If it feels right, Ubuntu's installer has a dedicated dual boot option that lets you install it alongside Windows and choose at startup which one to use. Most people who set up dual boot realize 3 months later they haven't touched Windows once. Second, visit protondb.com before you assume your favorite Windows games won't work on Linux. ProtonDB is a community database that tracks Steam game compatibility with Linux through a compatibility layer called Proton, developed by Valve. Thousands of Windows-only games now run on Linux with little to no configuration required, including many AAA titles. The gaming excuse for staying on Windows is significantly weaker than it was even 2 years ago. Third, if you have a machine that Microsoft says is not compatible with Windows 11 because it doesn't have the right processor or TPM chip, that machine will almost certainly run Ubuntu 26.04 beautifully. Don't throw it away. Don't pay Microsoft for extended support. Give it a second life. Fourth, and this one is for the people who are nervous about making the jump, look at your daily workflow and be honest about which applications you use. If your day is primarily a browser, a document editor, email, video calls, and maybe some light photo editing, Ubuntu 26.04 handles every single one of those things natively and well. LibreOffice reads and writes Microsoft Office formats. Thunderbird handles email. GIMP does photo editing. And if there's a specific Windows application you absolutely cannot replace, Bottles is a free tool on Ubuntu that lets you run many Windows programs through compatibility layers with a graphical interface. No command line required. For 30 years, the operating system market has been a duopoly. Microsoft and Apple have been the only realistic choices for the vast majority of people. Apple's hardware is beautiful and expensive and locked to a closed ecosystem. Microsoft's software has been cheap to license but increasingly extractive in the way it treats users as a monetization surface rather than customers. Linux has always been the third option that required too much expertise and too much tolerance for friction to be realistic for most people. Ubuntu 26.04 is the most serious challenge to that duopoly that has ever existed. Not because it beats Windows at every single thing, it doesn't. Not because it's perfect, it isn't. But because for the first time, the gap between what it costs to switch and what you gain by switching has narrowed to the point where millions of ordinary people can make the calculation and come out ahead. Your computer is a tool. It should work for you on your schedule without asking permission from anyone else's business model. You deserve an operating system that remembers that. If this video helped you see that a real choice exists, hit the like button. It genuinely helps other people find this content and have the same conversation. Drop a comment below telling me which part of your workflow you're most worried about moving to Linux. And if you want to stay ahead of these kinds of shifts in the tech world before the mainstream press catches up, subscribe. That's what this channel is here for.